Hey guys, tonight we are traveling back nearly 4,000 years. Not just to a different time, but to a different way of being human. We're going to the cradle of civilization, a sun-scorched land of life-giving rivers, where the very first cities are just beginning to write their stories into the clay of the earth. You'll stand at the dawn of law and order and witness the rise of a king whose name has echoed through millennia, Hammurabi. We'll see how a chaotic world of feuding tribes and petty kings was forged into an empire under a single, revolutionary idea, that justice should be written in stone for all to see. But let's be honest, you probably won't survive this. The life expectancy is about 30. The medicine involves magic spells, and the justice system, well, we'll get to the part where they throw you in a river to see if you're innocent. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And for a bit of fun, post your location and what time it is for you in the comments. It's always amazing to see where everyone is listening from. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. Your feet sink slightly into the soft, dark earth. It's not soil as you know it, but silt, a fine, almost silken powder carried down from distant mountains and gifted to this land by the two rivers that define it. Ahead of you, the Euphrates glides by, a wide, shimmering ribbon of liquid life in a world of baked clay and endless blue sky. In the other direction, its twin, the Tigris, flows with a slightly more aggressive current. You are standing between them and the heart of Mesopotamia, the land between the rivers. The air is thick with the smell of wet earth, blooming date palms, and the faint, musky scent of livestock. The sun here is not a gentle friend. It is a powerful, often punishing deity in its own right, beating down with a heat that makes the air ripple above the fields. This is the Fertile Crescent, and for thousands of years, it has been the world's most successful laboratory for human settlement. For generations, your ancestors wandered, following the herds and the seasons. But here, the land offered a different bargain. The rivers, with their predictable, life-giving floods, left behind this rich, black silt that could be coaxed into yielding miraculous harvests of barley and wheat. And so, your people put down their roots, literally. You see the results of this grand bargain all around you. Vast fields of green stretch to the horizon, crisscrossed by a network of hand-dug irrigation channels that shimmer in the intense light. This is the world's first of our large-scale engineering project, a testament to collective effort. This surplus of food is a revolution. It means not everyone has to be a farmer. As you wander from the fields toward the sounds of settlement, you see people shaping clay into pots, others weaving flax into linen, and still others hammering soft, gleaming copper into tools. This specialization is what builds a city, and you see it rising before you. A collection of simple, mud brick houses, clustered together for safety and community. The walls are thick, keeping the interior surprisingly cool. They aren't building with stone or wood, those array luxuries here, but with the very earth under their feet. To bind the bricks and waterproof their simple reed boats, they use a peculiar black ooze that seeps from the ground in certain places. It's called bitumen, a natural asphalt that is one of this land's secret ingredients to success. Inside the growing city walls, life is a chaotic, vibrant hum. You hear the bleating of goats, the shouting of merchants haggling over a sack of grain, and the rhythmic chanting of children practicing their letters. Not on paper, of course, but on damp clay tablets. They use a sharpened reed to press wedge-shaped marks into the soft surface. A new and powerful magic called cuneiform. It's the world's first writing system, and it has changed everything. Now, a farmer can record how many bushels of barley he's sending to the temple. A king can issue a decree that'll be read miles away, and a poet can write down a story about a great flood that'll outlast the city itself. Of course, with writing comes the world's first fine print. You can almost imagine a priest handing a farmer a 5-pound clay tablet and saying, "Just press your cylinder seal here at the bottom." It's just the standard terms and conditions for the temple's grain loan. This new urban life is intoxicating, but it's also fragile. Historians still argue whether the invention of farming in cities was a great leap forward for humanity, or a kind of trap. Sure, there's more food, but your diet is far less varied than that of your hunter-gatherer ancestors, living so close to your neighbor's end. Your animus has created a whole new world of diseases, and with property, with stored grain and valuable tools, comes a new and more urgent kind of conflict. What happens when one man's sheep eat another man's barley? What happens when a merchant from a faraway city cheats a local woman, without a king, without guards, without laws? Who decides? You are living in a world teetering on the edge of order and chaos, a place just waiting for a powerful idea or a powerful leader to give it shape. You leave the abstract idea of a Mesopotamian city behind and drift towards a specific one. Following the curve of the Euphrates, you come upon a settlement that, at first glance, seems no different from any other. A defensive wall, built not of imposing stone, but of simple, sun-dried mud brick, encircles a collection of houses. This is Babylon, and right now, it's not the glittering jewel of the ancient world you might imagine. It's more of a dusty, provincial town with delusions of grandeur. Its name, in the local Akkadian tongue, is Babalim, meaning Gate of the God. It's a rather ambitious title for a place that, in the grand scheme of things, is currently a bit of a backwater. The great powers of your time, the ancient and powerful cities of your Uruk, and more recently Isin and Larsa, would barely give it a second thought. It's like a tiny village today, calling itself Universe City. A little bit of aspirational branding that doesn't quite match the reality. The streets are narrow, unpaved, and wind without any apparent logic. The concept of urban planning is still a few centuries away, so the layout feels more organic, like tangled roots. Houses are built flush against each other, their shared walls offering some structural support and saving on materials. You duck through a low doorway into a typical courtyard home. The rooms are arranged around a central open space, where most of the daily life cooking, weaving, gossiping takes place. There are no windows facing the street, both for privacy and to keep out the ever-present dust and the scorching heat. As you look around, you realize the genius of their primary building material. Mud brick isn't glamorous, but it is abundant, cheap, and a fantastic insulator. The air inside is noticeably cooler, a welcome refuge from the relentless sun. At the heart of the city stands the temple complex, dedicated to Babylon's patron deity, a god named Marduk. Like Babylon itself, Marduk is currently a minor player in the vast Mesopotamian pantheon. Other cities worship far more important gods, the moon god Nana in Yor, or the sky god Anu in Uruk. Marduk's temple is modest, its ziggurat-stepped pyramid common to the region, looking more like a small wedding cake than the titanic Tower of Babylon, will one day become. Still, the temple is the center of everything. It's not just a place of worship, it's the city's primary bank, landowner, and administrative hub. Priests in linen robes bustle about, overseeing the collection of grain taxes and directing labor on the canals. Historians still argue whether the rulers of these early cities were primarily seen as chief priests, acting as shepherds for the city god, or if they were essentially strongmen, warlords who simply held power through force and claimed divine favor to legitimize it. Looking at the current king of Babylon, a man named Sin-Muballit, it's hard to tell. He makes the proper sacrifices, but he also spends a lot of time reinforcing those mud brick walls. The real key to Babylon's future success isn't its god or its king, but its location. You stroll down to the riverbank, the city's true main street. The Euphrates here is calm and navigable. Red boats, waterproofed with that black bitumen we saw earlier, glide past, piled high with goods. While not a major trading hub yet, Babylon is perfectly positioned. It sits at a point where the Tigris and Euphrates flow closest together, controlling the strategic corridor between the north and the south. Any ambitious ruler who could control this bottleneck could control the flow of trade, and with it, the flow of wealth and power throughout the entire region. It's the oldest rule in the book. Location, location, location. For now, though life is local, you wander back into the city and are drawn by a sound of cheerful commotion. You find yourself in a tavern, a popular and essential institution. Here, you get a taste of a true Mesopotamian staple, beer. Forget the crisp, clear beverage, This is a thick, soupy, nutritious brew, made by crumbling specially baked barley bread into water and letting it ferment. It's consumed unfiltered, which is why you see the tavern's patrons drinking it from large clay jars. Through long reed or metal straws, a clever way to bypass the floating bits of grain and chaff. Tea's beer, Eason tea, just for fun. It's a fundamental part of the diet, and even the economy. It's calorie-rich, safer to drink than potentially contaminated river water, and it was often used as a form of payment for laborers on public projects. You can just imagine the foreman shouting at the end of a long day of digging canals. "All right, boys, line up for your liquid bread." It is in these simple, daily moments the taste of barley beer, the cool of a mud brick house, the sight of a boat on the river, that the destiny of this humble city is slowly brewing. It's a place of unrealized potential, waiting in the dust and the heat for the right person to come along and give it a push onto the world stage. The dust of Babylon's streets seems to settle for a moment, the usual hum of commerce and daily life softening into a respectful hush. Your path leads you towards the city's heart. Not the temple this time, but the royal palace. It's not a grand, sprawling complex of marble and gold, like the houses of the common folk. Edie's, a larger, more intricate warren of mud brick, built for defense and administration more than for luxury. You feel a tension in the air, a collective holding of breath. The old king, Sinmubalit, has ruled for 20 years. He was a good king, a cautious king. You can see his work in the strengthened city walls, the newly dredged canals, the carefully maintained granaries. He spent his reign playing defense, a geopolitical game of survival against the titans of his day, especially the powerful kingdom of Larsa, to the south, ruled by the seemingly eternal king Rimsin. Sinmubolit's strategy was to keep Babylon's head down, to not attract the hungry gaze of its much larger neighbors. He was a manager, not a conqueror. And now, his time is ending. You slip through the arched gateway of the palace, finding yourself in a courtyard filled with anxious-looking officials and priests. Their whispers are like the rustling of dry reeds. Inside the main hall, the air is thick with the scent of cedarwood incense and lamp oil. The old king has died, and his son is about to take his place. You watch as a young man enters the room. This is Hammurabi. He's young, perhaps no more than 18 years of age, yet he moves with a stillness, an unnerving composure that makes him seem older. His eyes are what capture you. They are not the eyes of a boy inheriting a prize. They are the eyes of a predator that has been studying its environment, noting every strength, every weakness, every opportunity. He doesn't look overwhelmed by the weight of the crown. He looks like he's been waiting for it his entire life. He takes his seat on the modest throne, and the transfer of power, which could so easily be a moment of chaos and bloodshed, is calm, orderly, and absolute. His first few years on the throne are deceptively quiet. He continues his father's work, inspecting the fortifications, dedicating new chapels to the gods, and ensuring the irrigation systems are running smoothly. To the outside world, it looks like business as usual. The big kings in Larsa, in Ishnuna, in Mari, they take note of the new ruler in Babylon and dismiss him. He is just another Sinmubolit, a caretaker for a minor city-state, not a threat. And that is exactly what Hammurabi wants them to think. But you, watching from the shadows of the court, see the flickers of a much larger ambition. You see how he spends his evenings, not in feasting, but in studying the clay tablets that come in from every corner of Mesopotamia. These are not poems or histories, but diplomatic reports, merchant logs, and spy intercepts. He is learning the rivalries, the alliances, the economic dependencies of his neighbors. He is playing the long game. Historians still argue whether Hammurabi had a detailed master plan from the moment he took the throne, a step-by-step guide to conquest he followed for 30 years, or if he was a brilliant opportunist, reacting to events with genius and daring. Was he a chess master, thinking 10 moves ahead, or a gifted poker player who knew exactly when to bluff, when to hold, and when to go all in? One of his first major public acts gives you a clue to his cunning. He issues a decree known as This is a uniquely Mesopotamian tradition, a kind of royal reset button. With a single proclamation, Hammurabi cancels a wide range of private, non-commercial debts, Citizens who had been forced to sell themselves or their family members into servitude to pay off a loan are set free. It's a wildly popular move. The common people celebrate his name in the taverns, hailing him as a just and merciful king, but it is also a masterstroke of political and economic strategy. He hasn't just won the love of his subjects, he has restored his kingdom's economic base. All those farmers returning to their fields mean a better harvest next season and more taxes for the state. It's the ancient equivalent of a stimulus package combined with a public relations blitz. It costs him little, shows up his power at home, and signals to the world that Babylon is internally strong and stable, all under the guise of pious justice. You watch him, this young, determined king, and you realize the world has made a grave mistake in underestimating him. He is not a caretaker. He is a builder, a planner, a unifier in waiting, and he is patient. The storm is coming, but for now, there is only the quiet, steady work of a spider weaving the first threads of its web. For the first 30 years of Hammurabi's reign, you watch as he plays the part of the perfect, peaceful king. You see him dedicate statues to the gods, meticulously oversee the maintenance of the canals, and issue his proclamations of justice. The kingdom of Babylon is prosperous, stable, and, most importantly, quiet. To the great powers that surround him, he is a non quantita reliable, predictable ruler who poses no threat. The letters that arrive at the palace, pressed into damp clay by the scribes of other kings, are cordial, filled with the flowery, overly polite language of diplomacy. You can almost imagine the international scene as a tense dinner party. And for 3 decades, Hammurabi is the guest who just quietly compliments the food and doesn't cause a scene. He is cultivating an image of harmlessness, and his rivals are all too happy to believe it. Then, the world changes. A shadow falls from the eastern mountains. The kingdom of Elam, a fierce and ancient power, launches a massive invasion into the heart of Mesopotamia. They sweep down into the river plains, conquering cities and shattering the delicate balance of power. Suddenly, the squabbling city-states of the region are faced with a common existential threat, and in the ensuing panic, everyone looks for a leader. This is the moment Hammurabi has been waiting for. The patient spider now has a fly struggling in its web.
He doesn't act like a conqueror. He acts like a savior. Clay tablets begin flying out of Babylon, carried by tireless messengers on foot and by river boat. He sends a message to his most powerful rival, Rimsin of Larsa, the old king who has ruled the south for nearly 60 years. He proposes an alliance. To everyone else in the region, this is shocking. It's a geopolitical plot, twist of the highest order, but it's a brilliant move. He's positioning himself as a unifier, a leader who can put aside old grievances for the common good. It's the ancient equivalent of a high-stakes international coalition, where all the leaders secretly distrust each other, but smile for the cameras because the alternative is worse. You feel the shift in the very air of Babylon. The streets, once filled only with merchants and farmers, now throng with soldiers. They are not a professional standing army in the modern sense. They are levies. Farmers and craftsmen called up from their fields and workshops, handed a bronze-dipped spear and a simple shield. You watch them marching out of the city gates, their sandals kicking up clouds of fine, beige dust, the fate of Mesopotamia resting on their shoulders. The war is brutal and swift. The combined forces of Babylon and Larsa, under Hammurabi's strategic command, push the Elamites back, liberating the occupied cities. Hammurabi is hailed as the hero of Mesopotamia. And then, just as the victory celebrations are quieting down, he makes his real move. The ink on the victory tablets is barely dry when Hammurabi pivots. He uses the momentum, the military he has already assembled, and the prestige he has just won to turn on his allies. His first target is the kingdom that helped him defeat the Elamites, Larsa. He fabricates a pretext Rimsin failed to provide enough troops for the war effort, a convenient and impossible to disprove accusation, and declares war. The betrayal is stunning in its audacity. The old king, Rimsin, is caught completely off guard. The Babylonian army marches south. You witness the grim reality of Mesopotamian warfare. It's not about grand, open-field battles. It's about sieges. The goal is to surround a city, cut off its access to water and food, and wait. You see the Babylonian soldiers build earthen ramps up to the mud brick walls, pushing huge, clumsy, battering rams. It's a slow, grinding, miserable business. Before the final assault on Larsa, you watch the priests perform a bizarre and crucial ritual. They sacrifice a healthy sheep and carefully remove its liver. The organ is seen as a divine tablet, a message from the gods. The priests, these highly trained diviners, would then read the liver, noting its shape, color, and any unusual markings to predict the outcome of the battle. Historians still debate the true nature of Hammurabi's strategy. Was this audacious betrayal a spur-of-the-moment decision born of opportunity, or was the entire Elamite war a pretext, a complex, multi-year setup to justify eliminating his chief rival? The siege of Larsa is long and difficult, but in the end, the city falls. The elderly King Rimsin is captured, and his 60-year reign comes to an ignominious end. In a few short years, Hammurabi has gone from being a minor king to the undisputed master of southern Mesopotamia. He follows this victory with a series of lightning campaigns, conquering the powerful city of Mari to the west and Ishnana to the north. His former allies become his subjects. The sands of power have not just shifted. They have been swept away by a hurricane named Hammurabi. The steady gone. In its place, for the first time in centuries, stands a united Babylonian empire. The dust of war settles, replaced by the dust of construction. The soldiers you saw marching out of Babylon now trickle back in, not as conquering heroes enjoying a long rest, but as a redeployed labor force. Their spears are exchanged for shovels, their shields for reed baskets to haul earth. Hammurabi understands a fundamental truth of power. An idle army is a dangerous thing. But an army put to work building the state is an asset in both peace and war. You have witnessed the violent birth of an empire. Now you will watch as its bones are set and its arteries are carved into the land. Conquest gave Hammurabi territory. Construction will give him control. His first and most vital task is water. In Mesopotamia, wateri life wealth as one. You watch as thousands of men, under the unforgiving sun, begin to dig. They are not just clearing out old canals, but creating a massive, integrated network of waterways that will bind the newly conquered south to the Babylonian heartland. One project is of such a scale it becomes legendary. A great canal that runs for miles, connecting distant cities and turning thousands of acres of arid land into fertile fields. Hammurabi, never one to miss a branding opportunity, doesn't give it a simple, functional name. He calls it Hammurabi Nahashnisi, which translates to the rather grand and slightly clunky Hammurabi dash is dash the dash abundance dash of dash the people. You can almost hear the foreman sighing as they try to get that mouthful onto the official clay tablet progress reports. But the name is the point. It's one part public works, one part propaganda. Every farmer who draws water from it, every merchant who transports his goods on it, is reminded of who provides this prosperity. With the empire's agricultural and commercial lifeblood secured, Hammurabi turns his attention to the capital itself. Babylon is to be transformed from a provincial power into a true imperial center, a city worthy of its new status. The mud brick walls, which his father so diligently maintained, are now dwarfed by a new, titanic set of fortifications. Two concentric walls, thick enough for a chariot to ride upon, rise around the city. The message to the world is clear. What Hammurabi has taken, he intends to keep. But the most significant construction is religious. You see the modest temple of Marduk, Babylon's patron god, being remade into a wonder. The ziggurat, the stepped pyramid at its heart, climbs higher, a man-made mountain of brick dominating the flat landscape. This isn't just about civic pride. It's a profound political and theological statement. Before Hammurabi, Marduk was a minor god. Now, with Babylon as the capital, its god must be king of the gods. Hammurabi's scribes and priests begin a massive literary project, rewriting the old myths. They compose a new creation epic, the Enuma Elish, in which Marduk is the hero who defeats the forces of chaos and is granted supreme authority over all the other gods by the divine assembly. Historians still debate how much of this was genuine piety versus a calculated political move to legitimize his rule. By elevating his city's god, he elevates his own authority, making Babylon the divinely ordained center of the universe. Amidst all this grand state building, you see that the lives of ordinary people continue with their own deep-seated traditions. You follow a family as they prepare for the monthly Kispu ceremony. They carefully prepare a meal of bread, meat, and beer, and take it to a special chapel or a dedicated space in their home. There, they call out the names of their dead ancestors and invite their spirits to join them for the meal. This was not a somber or spooky occasion, but a way of keeping the family bond alive across the generations, ensuring the dead were not forgotten and, in turn, that they would continue to look favorably upon the living. It's a beautifully intimate ritual, a reminder that even as great kings build empires and rewrite theology, the fundamental human need for connection to family, to the past remains unchanged. Hammurabi has built the physical container for his new empire. The walls are strong, the canals flow, and the gods themselves have sanctioned his rule. But the empire is not made of mud, brick, and water. It is made of people, and governing hundreds of thousands of them from different cities with different customs presents a challenge far more complex than digging a canal. The great canals are dug, and the massive walls are finished. The granaries are full, and the temples are rich with offerings. From a distance, from the top of the newly enlarged ziggurat, the empire Hammurabi has built looks like a masterpiece of order, a perfect machine humming along in the Mesopotamian sun. But you drift down from that serene height, back into the narrow, winding streets of Babylon, and the sound you hear is not one of perfect harmony. It is the sound of friction, the grating, clamoring, endless noise of people living together. It is the cacophony of human disputes, and it is the last great wilderness Hammurabi must conquer. You watch as a merchant from the newly conquered city of Mari argues furiously with a Babylonian boatman down at the docks. A shipment of cedarwood, precious and rare in this treeless land, was lost when the boatman's vessel sprung a leak. The merchant claims the boat was poorly maintained. The boatman swears an evil water demon capsized him. Who is right? Who pays for the lost wood? Under the old system, it's a mess. The merchant would appeal to the customs of Mari, the boatman to the traditions of Babylon. There is no higher authority, no common ground. Justice, you realize, is currently a local product, and it doesn't travel well. You turn a corner and walk past a tavern. The owner, a formidable-looking woman, is in a shouting match with a patron. He holds up a clay cup, accusing her of watering down the beer. She swears by all the gods that it's the same recipe she has used for 20 years. In a world where beer is not just a drink, but a form of payment for labor, this is a serious accusation. It's not just bad service, it's a kind of fraud. You can almost see the first ever bad review being scribbled on a damp piece of clay. 1 star. Atmosphere is dusty. Biriwata would not recommend for your daily grain wage. How prove such a thing? Who decides the proper barley to water ratio for a commercial brew? These aren't grand matters of state, but they are the grit in the gears of the empire. For every major trade dispute, there are 1,000 smaller, more personal squabbles. A farmer's ox tramples his neighbor's barley field. Son believes his brother chived another father's inheritance. A man borrows a silver shekel from a temple priest and argues about the crushing interest rate. Before Hammurabi, resolving these issues was a chaotic affair. You would take your grievance to a panel of local elders, or perhaps a priest at the city temple. There, in the shade of the city gate, your case would be heard. But there were no written laws to consult. The judges made their decisions based on tradition, custom, and their own personal sense of what was right. Your reputation, your social standing, who you were married to, all of it mattered as much, if not more, than the actual facts of the case. It was a system built on personal relationships, not abstract principles. This is the great problem of people that Hammurabi now faces. He has unified Mesopotamia geographically. Now he must unify it legally. It's not that the idea of written laws was entirely new. For over 300 years, other Mesopotamian kings had occasionally issued small collections of laws. The most famous of these belonged to a king named Yornamu, who had laid down rules about witchcraft and runaway slaves. But these earlier codes were inconsistent, incomplete, and rarely survived their authors. They were boutique laws for a single city, not a universal operating system for an entire empire. Historians still argue whether Hammurabi's primary motivation for what he did next was a genuine desire for justice for the common person, or if it was a sophisticated tool of state control. Why truly a shep to his people, as his inscriptions would later claim, trying to protect the weak from the strong? Or was he a master administrator, a pragmatist who understood that a single, predictable set of rules for commerce and property would make the empire richer, more stable, and easier to tax? The truth is likely a mix of both. The final motivation comes to him in the form of a tragedy. You stand in a crowd watching as officials inspect a collapsed building. A family had just moved into their new home, built by a local contractor, when the roof caved in, killing the owner. The man's wife is weeping. His children are dazed. The builder stands to one side, sweating, insisting he used the best reeds and mud brick available. Who is to blame? Is it the builder's fault? An act of the gods. Should the builder pay a fine? Or should he suffer a more personal penalty? Under the current mess of conflicting customs, the answer is anyone's guess. You look towards the palace, and you can feel the king's frustration. This chaotic, unpredictable, and fundamentally unfair system cannot stand. He has built the canals, the walls, and the temples. Now he has to build justice itself, and he has decided to build it out of the strongest material he can find. The solution to the chaos of collapsing houses and watered-down beer does not begin in a courtroom or a scribe's school. It begins in the mountains, far to the east, in the land of his enemies. You are in a royal workshop in Babylon, but the centerpiece of the room, a colossal slab of black stone, is a foreigner here. It is not the familiar, humble clay of the riverbeds. This is diorite, a volcanic rock of incredible hardness, hauled for hundreds of miles by teams of men and beasts, a feat of logistics as impressive as any military campaign. The choice of material is the first and most powerful message. clay tablets can be broken or soaked in water and wiped clean. This stone is meant to last forever. It is permanent. It is authority. It is the end of the argument. You stand in the shadows, watching the artisans at work. The air is filled with the rhythmic, high-pitched tink, tink, tink of bronze chisels striking the unyielding surface. A fine, dark grey powder hangs in the air, coating everything with a film of monumental effort. This is not the swift, fluid work of a scribe pressing a reed into soft clay. This is a battle between human will and geology. A team of scribes brings over a freshly baked clay tablet, its surface covered in the dense, wedge-shaped marks of cuneiform. They have composed and edited the text there first, because a typo on a clay tablet is a minor inconvenience. A typo on this slab of diorite would be a career-ending mistake. The master carver, a man whose forearms are thick with muscle from a lifetime of this work, squints at the tablet and then turns to the stone. With painstaking precision, he begins to chip away, recreating the intricate symbols. It is agonizingly slow work. A single line of text might take a full day to complete. As you watch, you realize you are witnessing the birth of a new kind of power. For the first time, the king's words are being separated from the king's mouth. His judgment will now exist in this physical object, silent and unmoving, yet speaking with his full authority, day and night, long after he is gone. As the days turn into weeks, the monument takes shape. It is nearly 7.5 feet tall, a tapering cylinder designed to be stood upright. A silent, black sentinel in a public square. The bottom 3/4 of its surface are slowly being covered in ruler-straight columns of text, so tightly packed it looks like a solid mass from a distance. This is the fine print of civilization, the terms and conditions for belonging to the Babylonian Empire. There are 282 laws in total, covering everything from the price of renting an ox to the penalty for a surgeon whose patient dies on the operating table.
But your eyes are drawn to the top of the stele, where the master carver is working on a detailed relief sculpture. It is the monument's logo, its divine seal of approval. The scene depicts two figures. One stands, wearing a royal cap, his hand raised to his mouth in a gesture of respect and prayer. This is Hammurabi. Before him, seated on a throne, is a powerful god. Rays of light emanate from the god's shoulders, and he wears a horned crown, signifying his divinity. This is Shamash, the sun god, and more importantly, the god of justice. The god is extending his hand to Hammurabi, offering him two objects: a ring and a rod. These are symbols of divine authority, the tools of a surveyor or builder used to ensure straight lines and right angles. They are the divine receipts for the delivery of justice. The message is a masterpiece of political propaganda. Hammurabi did not invent these laws. He is not some tyrant imposing his personal will. He is merely the humble servant, the chosen king, receiving these timeless, perfect laws from the ultimate divine source. As the carvers near the bottom of the stele, you notice something odd. A section of the columns, perhaps 35 laws in all, has been polished smooth, the text erased. Historians would later discover that the stele was captured and arrayed centuries after Hammurabi's death and carried off to the Elamite capital of Susa. The Elamite king likely had this section cleared to carve his own glorious inscription, though for some reason, he never got around to it, leaving a blank space that piques curiosity to this day. Scholars continue to debate whether the stele was a comprehensive legal code meant to be consulted by judges for every case, or if it was more of a royal monument, a piece of propaganda showcasing Hammurabi's wisdom and piety, with the inscribed laws serving as examples of his just judgment. Either way, as the final chisel strike echoes in the workshop, the thing is finished. It is a weapon, an instruction manual, and a sacred object all in one, and it is about to change the world. The newly carved stele is not hidden away in the king's palace. It is brought with great ceremony to the temple precinct of Shamash, the sun god. the divine source of these very laws. You watch as a team of laborers levers the Teuton monument into place in a public courtyard. It stands there, a pillar of black, alien stone, cool to the touch in the morning shade, but shimmering in the afternoon heat. It's imposing. It's intimidating, and it's meant for you. The laws are not a secret. They are a public declaration. It's the ancient world's equivalent of nailing the terms and conditions of a new social contract to the door of the city itself. And just like today, most people probably don't bother to read the fine print until they're already in trouble. Since most of the population, including you, is illiterate, the stele is not just a static monument. Scribes are often present, reading sections aloud to the gathered crowds, translating the dense cuneiform into the spoken Akkadian of the street. You join a small group of onlookers, listening as a priest with a clear, authoritative voice recites the king's justice. He gets to the section on personal injury, and you hear the words that will echo for the next 4,000 years. Law 196. He chants, "If a man should blind the eye of another man, they shall blind his eye." A murmur goes through the crowd. He continues, Law 200. If a man should knock out the tooth of a man of his own rank, they shall knock out his tooth. This is the principle of lex talionis, the law of retaliation. You know it by its more famous phrasing. An eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. On the surface, it's brutally simple. The punishment is a mirror of the crime. Whatever harm you do, the state will now do to you. It is a terrifyingly symmetrical kind of justice. You have to admit, there's a certain brutal elegance to it. The paperwork for the court must have been incredibly straightforward. There's no complex sentencing guide, no parole board, just a simple 101 correspondence. But the code's application of this principle can be far more creative and far more chilling than a simple eye for an eye. The scribe reads Law 230, and you feel a cold knot form in your stomach. It addresses the case of the careless house builder whose shoddy work we worried about earlier. If a builder builds a house for a man and does not make its construction firm, and the house which he has built collapses and causes the death of the owner of the house, that builder shall be put to death. That seems straightforward enough. But then comes the next part. If it causes the death of the son of the owner of the house, they shall put to death the son of that builder. The crowd goes silent. This is a shocking new logic. The builder is not punished for his crime directly, but through a terrible, mirrored loss. Hetoka son, so his son is taken. The law is not just punishing the guilty party. It is rebalancing the scales of fate in the most literal and heartbreaking way imaginable. It is a justice that is blind to intent, blind to circumstance, and concerned only with the absolute, symmetrical restoration of a loss. Historians still argue whether these punishments were meant to be carried out literally in every case. Was a builder's son really dragged from his home and executed because of his father's poor workmanship? Or were these laws the ultimate deterrent? A statement of the most extreme possible penalty, designed to ensure that the builder would instead offer a massive financial compensation to the victim's family to avoid the horrific sentence. We have thousands of Babylonian court records on clay tablets, but almost none of them reference these specific corporal punishments being enacted. They are filled with cases settled by fines of silver or grain. So perhaps the stele wasn't a mandatory sentencing guide, but a terrifying piece of leverage for the victim. A way of saying, pay me what I ask, or we'll see what the king's law has to say about it. Still, the principle was there, carved in stone. And as harsh as it sounds to your modern ears, you have to understand it in its context. Before this, justice was often a private matter. If someone from another clan wronged you, your family's honor might demand a response. This could escalate into a blood feud, a cycle of revenge that could last for generations, tearing the community apart over a single stolen sheep or an unfortunate insult. Hammurabi's code, for all its brutality, is an attempt to stop this. It takes justice out of the hands of the individual and gives it to the state. It says, you will not seek your own revenge. The state will do it for you, and the revenge will be proportional, no more, no less. It is the end of the blood feud. It is the beginning of a cold, hard, impersonal law. The state, not your angry cousin, is now the one who knocks out the tooth. The scribe's voice drones on in the courtyard, a steady, monotonous recitation of the king's justice. You've just wrapped your head around the brutal symmetry of an eye for an eye, the idea that the state will perfectly mirror a crime with its punishment. It feels harsh, but at least it feels equal. And then, the scribe reads the very next law, Law 198, and the entire concept of equality shatters into 1,000 pieces. If he should blind the eye of a commoner, the scribe intones, he shall pay 1 mina of silver. You feel a ripple of confusion in the crowd. Wait a second. Just a moment ago, the punishment for blinding an eye was losing your own. Now, it's a fine. The scribe continues, if he should blind the eye of a man's slave, he shall pay 1/2 of the slave's value. And there it is. The great asterisk at the bottom of Hammurabi's grand legal contract. You discover that justice in Babylon is anything but blind. In fact, it is intensely status conscious. The principle of an eye for an eye only applies if the eye in question belongs to someone in your own social class. Society here is formally divided into 3 tiers. At the top are the Awilim, the gentlemen or upper class. These are the high-ranking priests, the wealthy landowners, the military elite. They are the first-class passengers on the ship of state. Below them are the mushkinam, a term that is difficult to translate, but essentially means commoners or free persons. These are the craftsmen, the farmers, the tavern keepers, the vast majority of the empire's population. They are the economy class passengers, and at the very bottom are the wardem, the slaves. They are not passengers at all. They are cargo. Your social class determines the value of your body parts. If an Awilim breaks the arm of another Awilim, his own arm is broken in return. But if that same noble breaks the arm of a Mushkinam, he simply pays a fine. It's like a tiered subscription plan for justice, where the elite get the premium eye for an eye coverage. But for everyone else, there's just a copay. The system protects the bodies of the wealthy and powerful, while treating the bodies of the common folk as a matter of property and financial compensation. And the bodies of slaves, they are treated exactly as property, with their value calculated in silver, just like a lost ox or a damaged boat. This stratification extends to every corner of the law, but it becomes even more complicated when you introduce another factor: gender. Women in Hammurabi's Babylon were not simply chattels. They had a surprising number of legal rights. They could own property. They could run businesses, remember that tavern keeper from earlier, and they could even initiate divorce under certain, very specific circumstances. A woman's dowry, the property she brought into a marriage, remained legally hers, a crucial piece of financial security. But for every right, there seems to be a restriction that reinforces a powerful patriarchal structure. You listen as the scribe reads the laws concerning family life, and the double standards are breathtaking. Take the case of adultery. Law 129 is chillingly clear. If a man's wife is caught lying with another man, they shall bind them and cast them into the water. Both of them drowned together in the river. But then comes the twist. The law adds a final clause. If the husband of the woman wishes to spare his wife, then the king may also spare his servant. The husband holds the power of life and death. If he, for whatever reason, decides to forgive his wife, her lover is automatically forgiven too. But a wife who's cheated on has no such power to accuse, condemn, or pardon her husband. His infidelity is not a crime in the same way hers is. Her fidelity is a matter of property and legitimate heirs. His is a matter of personal discretion. Historians still debate the practical application of these laws and how much they reflected the lived reality of Babylonian women versus an idealized patriarchal standard. Were courtrooms really filled with husbands making life or death decisions? Or was this, again, a legal threat to ensure female fidelity? One quirky and rather telling law shows the precarious position of women who operated in the public sphere. Law 109 states that if a group of conspirators meets in the house of a female tavern keeper and she fails to report them to the authorities, she shall be put to death. It's a fascinating insight. It shows that a woman could run her own business, but she was also expected to be an extension of the state's security apparatus, with the ultimate penalty for failing in that duty. She has agency, but it comes with a terrifying level of risk. The law, you realize, is not just a tool for order, it's a tool for reinforcing the social hierarchy, for keeping everyone, from the highest noble to the lowest slave, firmly in their designated place. You find yourself back in the makeshift courtroom by the city gate, the shade offering little relief from the oppressive heat and the even more oppressive legal dilemma unfolding. You've seen how the law changes based on who you are. Now you will see what happens when the law simply gives up. When human judgment hits a wall and turns the case over to a higher and far more terrifying authority. Before the judges sits a man accusing his neighbor of witchcraft. He claims the neighbor cast a spell that made his prize-milking goat go dry. The accused man stands silently, his face a mask of fear. There is no evidence. There are no witnesses. It is one man's word against another's. In a situation like this, the first step is often the divine oath. The accused would be taken to a temple, where, in the presence of the god's statue, he would have to swear his innocence. This is not the casual "I swear" of your time. This is a conditional self-curse of the highest order. You watch as a different man in a different casa dispute over a property line is made to swear. He places his hand on the emblem of a god and says, "I swear by the great god Marduk and our king Hammurabi that this is my land. If I am lying, may the gods forsake me. May my children fall ill. May my name be erased from the memory of my people." To lie under such an oath was unthinkable. It wasn't just perjury. It was a direct invitation for divine wrath upon your entire family line. For most disputes, the terror of this oath was enough to bring out the truth. But for the most serious, evidence-free crimes like sorcery or a wife's alleged adulterethothes, not enough. The court throws up its hands and outsources the verdict. For this, you follow the procession from the city gate down to the banks of the wide, slow-moving Euphrates. A crowd gathers, their chatter a low hum of anticipation and dread. The river, the source of life for this entire civilization, is about to become an instrument of final judgment. This is a trial by ordeal, and the judge is the river god himself. The accused man is brought to the water's edge. He is not bound or weighed down. He is simply instructed to enter the river. The logic of what happens next is the complete opposite of what your modern mind expects. If the man is thrown in and immediately sinks, drowning in the murky depths, the river god has taken him. He is guilty. If, however, he manages to float and is carried safely back to the riverbank, the god has rejected him, proving his innocence. It's a pass-fail test administered by a deity, where floating is passing. It probably helped to be a decent swimmer, though one imagines a divine ruling would overrule even the strongest swimmer's abilities. You can't help but think of the sheer terror not just of drowning, but of being publicly condemned by a god in the process. You watch as the man accused of sorcery wades into the current, his eyes wide with fear. He stumbles, and the river takes him. He disappears beneath the brown, swirling water. A gasp goes through the crowd. He is guilty. The case is closed. There is no appeals court, unless you count complaining directly to the river god, which, by that point, is far too late. Historians still argue about the frequency of the river ordeal. Was it a common, terrifying spectacle that kept society in line? Or was it a method of last resort, so dreaded that its very existence prevented most of these unprovable accusations from ever being made in the first place? But here's the part that makes this system more than just a cruel lottery. The law in the stele is very clear about what happens next. Law states, if the holy river proves that man is innocent and he comes forth unharmed, the man who laid the charge of sorcery against him shall be put to death. The man who survived the river ordeal shall seize the estate of his accuser. This is a powerful, deadly deterrent. If you are going to accuse someone of a crime so serious that it requires a divine trial, you had better be absolutely certain. If you are wrong, you pay with your life and your property. It's the ultimate penalty for filing a frivolous lawsuit. This divine judgment, in all its terror, underpins the entire legal system. It is the final, unanswerable backstop for a world without forensic science. A world where the gods were not just figures in a story, but active, and often lethal, participants in the daily lives of their followers. The splash from the river ordeal seems to fade, the divine drama receding as you turn your attention back from the sacred and the terrifying to the simple. Grubby, and profoundly human business of everyday life. The stele in the temple courtyard doesn't just deal with sorcery and murder. Most of its 282 laws are a practical handbook for an advanced urban society, a detailed attempt to regulate every transaction, every agreement, and every potential screw-up that can happen when thousands of people live and work together. You are about to see just how deeply Hammurabi's new rules penetrate the fabric of daily existence. Your first stop is the tavern, that same cheerful, noisy hub of Babylonian social life. Remember the thick, soupy beer served in large jars? It's still the most popular drink in town, but now, its sale is regulated. You listen to patron argues with the female tavern keeper over the price. He claims she is overcharging him, demanding more grain in payment than the standard rate. Before Hammurabi, this would be a shouting match. Now, the tavern keeper points a thumb in the general direction of the temple precinct. Law 108 is clear. If a tavern keeper refuses to accept grain for the price of beer but demands silver instead, or if the amount of beer she gives is less than the amount of grain she receives, she shall be convicted and cast into the water. The same penalty as adultery, now applied to a commercial transaction. It's a shockingly severe punishment for what you might consider a minor case of price gouging. But it shows how vital this Baran barley economy was. You can almost picture a government official with a clay clipboard performing surprise inspections, a kind of proto-health inspector checking the viscosity of the local brew. From the public world of commerce, you drift into the private world of the family home. Here, the code is just as intrusive and just as focused on the bottom line. You watch as two families meet to arrange a marriage. It is not a romantic negotiation. It is a business deal. The groom's father has brought the terhetum, the bride price. It's a payment made to the bride's father, not to buy the woman, but to compensate her family for the loss of her labor, and to formalize the new alliance between the families. In return, the bride's father presents the sheratum, the dowry. This is a collection of goods, furniture, clothing, perhaps a few silver shekels or even a slave that will travel with the bride to her new home. This dowry remains legally hers. It is her security, her nest egg, and if her husband unjustly divorces her, he must return it to her in full. The marriage contract itself, which a scribe is carefully pressing into a clay tablet, reads more like a corporate merger agreement than a declaration of love. It details the finances, the penalties for breaking the contract, and the disposition of property. Historians and legal scholars still debate whether the primary purpose of these detailed family laws was to protect women's financial interests, or to more rigidly control their reproductive capacity. For the benefit of the patriarchal family line, this obsession with contractual obligation and professional responsibility extends to nearly every job. You recall the grim law about the builder whose shoddy house collapses and kills the owner's son. That same principle of myriad, painful liability applies to other professions. You find yourself in a surgeon's quarters. He is preparing to operate on a wealthy nobleman, using a small, sharp, bronze scalpel. Law 218 looms over him like a storm cloud. If a physician performs a major operation on a gentleman with a bronze lancet and causes the gentleman's death, they shall cut off his hands. It's a high-stakes version of a Yelp review. If the patient dies, the surgeon doesn't just get a bad rating. He loses his career in his hands. The law also meticulously sets the fees for a successful operation: 10 shekels of silver for saving a nobleman's life, 5 for a commoner, and 2 for a slave. In a quirky and telling detail, this professional regulation extends even to the animal kingdom. You see a man leading a sick ox to a veterinarian? The law has this covered, too. Law 224 sets the fee for curing a serious wound on an ox or a donkey. But just like with the surgeon, there is a penalty for failure. Law 225 states that if he operates and causes the animal's death, he must pay the owner 1/4 of the animal's value. From the price of a beer to the dowry of a bride, from the hands of a surgeon to the life of a sick donkey, the code attempts to create a world with no excuses. It is a world of fierce, unforgiving accountability, where everyone knows the rules, and everyone knows the price of breaking them.
The sounds of the surgeon's workshop and the bride's dowry negotiations begin to fade. The vibrant, chaotic energy of Hammurabi's own time dissolving like a dream. The great king himself is long gone, his body resting in a tomb whose location is now lost to the wind and the dust. His son and his grandson have ruled after him, and yet his prenev butasatek. To find him, you don't go to a palace or a battlefield. You go to school. You find yourself in a stuffy, sun-baked room, a Babylonian schoolhouse. Known as an Ediba or tablet house, the air smells of wet clay, nervous sweat, and the faint, sharp scent of the reeds used for writing. A dozen or so boys are seated on low clay benches, each one hunched over a lump of damp earth. These are the sons of the elite, the future bureaucrats, priests, and merchants who will form the administrative backbone of the empire. They are learning the most difficult and powerful skill in the world, how to read and write cuneiform. And their primary textbook, their most grueling and important assignment, is the Code of Hammurabi. You watch one young student, his tongue sticking out of the corner of his mouth in concentration. In one hand, he holds his stylus, a piece of reed cut to a triangular tip. In the other, he cradles a small, pillow-shaped tablet of wet clay. His master copy is a larger, well-formed tablet propped up in front of him. His task is to copy a section of the laws. He squints, then carefully presses the end of the stylus into his tablet, making a single, wedge-shaped mark. Then another, and another. This isn't like writing with a pen. It's more like a painstaking form of printing, composing complex signs one tiny wedge at a time. He's working on the laws of property rental. A man for cultivation, but does not produce any grain in the field. He presses in the symbols for grain, but his hand slips. And the wedge is too deep, the angle all wrong. He lets out a frustrated sigh, a sound that is identical in every classroom across human history. He quickly smooths the error over with his thumb, smudging the clay, and tries again. Archaeologists have found thousands of these schoolboy tablets, and they are a wonderfully human mess. They are riddled with spelling mistakes, grammatical errors, and clumsy handwriting. Sometimes you can even see the Amia, the master scribes, corrections scratched into the margin, the ancient equivalent of a teacher's red ink. For over 1,000 years after Hammurabi's death, this scene is repeated, generation after generation. His laws became the foundation of Mesopotamian education. But why? Historians still argue whether this endless, repetitive copying was a form of legal training or a purely literary one. Were these students being prepared to become judges, memorizing the legal code of the land? Or was the code simply the perfect teaching tool, a text that used complex grammar, advanced vocabulary, and formal sentence structures, making it the ideal final exam for any aspiring scribe? Perhaps the goal was not to train lawyers, but simply to teach a student how to write with the elegance and authority befitting a high-ranking official. It's the ancient world's version of making English students study Shakespeare. You might not talk like that in everyday life, but mastering it proves your command of the language. The sheer longevity of this practice is staggering. Scribes were still copying Hammurabi's laws in the libraries of Assyrian kings a full millennium after they were first carved into that diorite stele. The code had become more than a set of rules. It had become a cultural artifact, a masterpiece of ancestral wisdom. To copy it was to commune with a legendary past, with the great king who had first brought true order to the world. It was an act of historical preservation and reverence. You can almost hear the students grumbling, just like students everywhere. When are we ever going to use this? Little did they know that they were the crucial link in a chain of transmission, the human conduits that carried this ancient legal DNA through the centuries. The young scribe in front of you finally finishes his tablet for the day. He carefully carries it outside and sets it in the courtyard to bake in the sun, turning the soft clay into hard, durable ceramic. Tomorrow, he might use the reverse side to practice his math, or perhaps, when the teacher isn't looking, to idly doodle a picture of a goat. In his hands, the laws of the great king are not a majestic monument of black stone, but a piece of homework. And through this humble, repetitive, and deeply human process of education, the ghost of Hammurabi continues to govern his empire, one clay tablet at a time. While generations of students are carefully copying the laws on their little clay tablets, the empire that those laws were built to govern is proving to be a far less durable creation. The life's work of a great king, you learn, is a bit like a magnificent, high-maintenance classic car. It looks amazing on the day you inherit it, but the moment you take it for a drive, things start to rattle and fall off. The great King Hammurabi dies after a long and glorious reign of 42 years. His son, Samshualuna, takes the throne. And almost immediately, the warning lights on the imperial dashboard begin to flash. The empire was built on conquest, personal loyalty, or witim gon, be serf. The great cities of the south, Larsa and Yor, the ancient powers that Hammurabi had so decisively crushed, rise up in a massive rebellion. Samshualuna is a capable ruler, but he spends the better part of his reign just trying to hold on, racing from one crisis to the next, playing a desperate game of whack-a-mole with rebellions across the kingdom. He eventually puts the revolts down, but the cost is enormous. The empire is weakened, its resources drained, its southern territories ravaged by the constant warfare. The grand unity that Hammurabi had forged is beginning to crack. You drift forward through time, about a century and a half after Hammurabi's death. The Babylonian Empire is still here, but it is a shadow of its former self. It has shrunk back, more or less, to the original Babylonian heartland. It is just one regional power, among many, no longer the undisputed master of Mesopotamia. And now, a new and dangerous force is emerging from the distant, rugged mountains to the northwest, from the land you would one day call Turkey. They are the Hittites, a people who speak an alien, Indo-European language, and who have mastered the art of war in a way that makes the old Mesopotamian ways seem slow and clumsy. Then, in the year 1595 BCE, the unthinkable happens. The Hittite king, Mursili I, embarks on what has to be the most audacious and destructive road trip in ancient history. He leads his army out of their mountain strongholds and down the Euphrates River, not on a slow campaign of conquest, but on a lightning raid. It's a march of over 500 miles, a shocking display of military reach and ambition. The Babylonians are caught completely by surprise. The city, which had seemed so invincible behind its massive walls, falls. You watch in horror as the Hittite soldiers storm the streets. This isn't the orderly transfer of power you saw when Hammurabi took the throne. This is chaos, fire, and plunder. Buildings are torched, temples are desecrated. But the Hittites are not here to stay. They are not conquerors in the traditional sense. They are here to smash, grab, and leave. Their ultimate prize is not the city itself, but its soul. They fight their way into the great temple of Marduk and carry off the cult statue of the god himself, a massive, sacred idol of gold and lapis lazuli. To the Babylonians, this is the ultimate humiliation, a theological catastrophe. Their god has been taken prisoner. The city is spiritually dead. And then, as quickly as they arrived, the Hittites are gone. They vanish back up the river, leaving behind a smoldering, broken city and a massive power vacuum. Historians still argue about the exact motivations for this bizarre and devastating raid. Was it a strategic move to eliminate a long-distance rival? Was it simply an opportunity for a new king to win glory and immense wealth? Or was it part of a complex internal power struggle within the Hittite royal family? Whatever the reason, it was a geopolitical hit-and-run of staggering proportions. Into the chaos that follows, a new and mysterious group of people begin to filter down from the mountains to the east. They are the Kassites. We know very little about their origins or their language. For centuries, they had been a minor, little-known people on the fringes of civilization. Now, they move into the wounded city of Babylon, not as conquerors, but almost as squatters. They pick up the pieces, restore the temples, and establish a new dynasty that will, surprisingly, rule Babylonia for over 400 years longer than Hammurabi's dynasty ever did. They adopt the Babylonian language, the Babylonian religion, and, most importantly, the Babylonian tradition of law. The empire of Hammurabi is dead. But in the schools, the scribes continue to copy his code, preserving the ghost of the order he created long after its physical body has turned to dust. The dust of Kassite Babylon, of Assyrian Nineveh, of Persian Persepolis, swirls around you, a whirlwind of centuries. Empires rise and fall like the winter floods, each one scouring the landscape and leaving its own layer of silt. The cuneiform script, that powerful magic of wedge-shaped marks on clay, is slowly forgotten, replaced by the elegant, flowing lines of Aramaic and Greek alphabets. The great ziggurats crumble back into the earth from which they were made. The very memory of Hammurabi, the mighty king, the unifier, the lawgiver, fades into the realm of myth, a half-remembered name in a story no one can quite recall. His magnificent stele, the black stone pillar containing his immortal words, is gone, looted from its courtyard, and vanished from history. The world forgets. Now, you leap forward in time. The year is 1901. The air is no longer thick with the dust of crumbling mud brick, but with the dry, academic dust of a French archaeological dig. You are in the windswept hills of western Iran, at the site of the ancient Elamite capital of Susa. A team of excavators, led by a man named Jacques de Morgan, is carefully sifting through the ruins of this once great city. They are searching for the treasures of Elam, but, ironically, the greatest treasure they will find is not Elamite at all. It is a piece of stolen property from a much older kingdom. You watch as the local workmen, digging in the ruins of the ancient Acropolis, hit something hard. It's not a wall, not a paving stone. It's a large, curved piece of black stone. They dig further, their shovels scraping against its polished surface. Slowly, painstakingly, they unearth the first fragment. It is heavy, made of that same dark, volcanic diorite that seemed so alien in the Mesopotamian plain. And its surface is covered in that dense, impenetrable script that only a handful of scholars in the world can read. Then they find a second piece, and a third. Exings monumental pillard. The team is excited, but they have no idea what they have truly found. The fragments are carefully crated up and shipped back to Paris, to the Louvre Museum. There, one of the world's few experts in the dead language of Akkadian, a Dominican friar named Jean-Vincent Shea, is given the monumental task of translation. You can imagine him in a quiet, book-lined office, poring over the casts of the inscription, a single lamp burning late into the night. He carefully works his way through the prologue, a long, boastful account of a king's accomplishments, a king he has only read about in obscure king lists. Then, he gets to the laws themselves. His excitement must have been electric. This wasn't just another royal inscription, another hymn to a forgotten god. This was a complete, sophisticated, legal system from the dawn of human history. When Scheil publishes his translation in 1902, it causes a sensation that ripples across the globe. Ita Franc page story newspaper. Here, resurrected from the dust of nearly 4,000 years, was a fully formed legal code predating the laws of Moses by centuries. It felt like finding the original source code for civilization itself. Scholars, theologians, and the general public are all captivated. The discovery immediately ignites a fierce and often ugly debate. It's known as the Babel and Bible controversy. Some scholars, particularly in Germany, seize upon the code's proof that the Hebrew Bible, especially the laws in the book of Exodus, was not a unique divine revelation, but was simply borrowed from these older Mesopotamian traditions. The parallels were undeniable. Both had laws about an eye for an eye, about a goring ox, about the responsibilities of shepherds. The debate becomes entangled with nationalism and anti-Semitism, a scholarly argument that breaks out of the university and into the public square. Was the Bible just a late, derivative work? Or was the similarity simply proof of a shared cultural and legal background across the ancient Near East? That argument, in a more academic form, can use this. As you stand in the hushed halls of the Louvre, watching the museum workers reassemble the 3 heavy fragments, you see the stele whole for the first time in millennia. The blank space where the Elamite king had erased some of the laws is like a scar, a silent testament to its long and violent history. It was created as a symbol of eternal, immovable order. And yet, its own story is one of theft, loss, burial, and rediscovery. It is not an eternal monument, you realize, but a message in a bottle, a fragile survivor, its journey from a sunny courtyard in Babylon to this climate-controlled room in Paris, a near miracle of preservation. You stand there for a long time in the quiet of the museum, the sounds of modern Paris muffled by the thick stone walls. The initial shock of the stele's rediscovery, the drama of its translation, the academic squabbles all of it fades. You're left with the object itself, a silent black pillar that has somehow managed to broadcast a message across a gulf of 4,000 years. And as you look at it, you begin to untangle its true and often misunderstood legacy. It's not about the brutal eye for an eye punishments. Our modern world has, for the most part, moved beyond that. It's not about the rigid class structure or the patriarchal family laws. Those are the parts of the code that are most alien to us now. The real echoes of this stone are quieter, more fundamental, and woven so deeply into the fabric of our own societies that we barely notice them. The most revolutionary idea of all is the one you've been circling this whole time, the simple fact that the law is written down and displayed in public. Before this, justice was a mystery, a secret held in the minds of priests and elders, subject to their moods, their biases, their memories. Hammurabi dragged justice out of the shadows and into the sunlight. By carving it in stone, he declared that the lior was not a personal opinion, but a public standard. It was stable, permanently noble to all. This is the foundational promise of every constitution, every legal code, every impenetrable terms of service agreement you scroll past without reading. It's the idea that the rules of the game should be published before the game begins. And hidden within its often harsh decrees is a concept that feels shockingly modern, the presumption of innocence. You think back to the man accused of sorcery. The law didn't just say, he's accused, so let's throw him in the river. It said the accuser had to bring the charge. It was then up to the gods, through the river, to prove the man's guilt. Law 1 explicitly states that if a man brings a charge of murder against another but cannot prove it, the accuser shall be put to death. This is an incredibly powerful principle. It puts the burden of proof squarely on the person making the accusation. It's a built-in defense against malicious prosecution. For all its strangeness, the code seems to work from a starting position that a person is innocent until proven guilty, a cornerstone of legal systems you live with today. The code's third great legacy is the one that ended the blood feuds. It established the state as the sole arbiter of justice and the sole legitimate user of violence. Your angry cousin can't go knock out your neighbor's tooth anymore. Only the government can. While this sounds a bit like we've just outsourced our revenge to a bigger, more organized entity, it's the bedrock of a peaceful society. By monopolizing justice, Hammurabi was attempting to break the endless, destructive cycles of private vengeance. He was building a system. Of course, the system was profoundly flawed. We saw how it valued the eye of a nobleman more than the eye of a commoner. Its treatment of women was a complex mix of protection and control. Its punishments can make your stomach turn. Historians still argue whether the Code of Hammurabi is the direct, linear ancestor of modern law, with a clear line of descent through Greek and Roman traditions, or if it was more like a brilliant but ultimately separate experiment in civilization, an early answer to the universal questions of social order that later cultures would have to answer all over again for themselves. But whether it's a direct ancestor or a distant great uncle, its central premise that rulers' primary duty is to establish justice, to make justice shine in the land, to destroy the wicked and the evil, that the strong might not oppress the weak, became the ultimate mission statement for what a king, a president, or a government ought to be. That is the promise Hammurabi made. It is the ideal he carved into this black stone, an ideal so powerful that even his own flawed, brutal, and unequal laws couldn't entirely extinguish its light. And so, the journey ends. The lights in the great museum begin to dim, and the black stone of the stele dissolves back into the quiet darkness of the past. The sounds of ancient Babylon, the clatter of the marketplace, the scribe's chant, the ominous splash in the river, all of it recedes now, growing fainter and fainter until it is nothing more than a soft, distant hum. The heat of the Mesopotamian sun cools on your skin, and the dry dust of the plains settles, leaving only the gentle stillness of your own quiet room. The two great rivers, the Tigris and the Euphrates, continue their endless, patient flow toward the sea, carrying with them the silt and the stories of countless lives, washing away the borders of empires and the names of kings. Hammurabi's great attempt to build a perfect, unchangeable order out of the chaos of human life is over. The world he tried to regulate with such fierce precision has long since fallen asleep. Its complicated triumphs and its heartbreaking cruelties all resting now beneath a deep blanket of time. All that is left is the soft background hum, the gentle rhythm of your own breathing, and the comfortable, quiet darkness that waits to carry you into your own peaceful dreams. The story is over. It is time to rest that sweet dream